This is structured just like a Purana, a traditional storytelling medium in Hindu mythology, and I love that, but it takes place in modern times where the divine feminine and the divine masculine, mother and father, have incarnated on earth as our protagonists, and Shiva, the father, is incarnated as Siddh, S-I-D-H. Let's see where we left off. We were just kind of setting the scene, still unsure of exactly how all these characters play into the role that they do and the context. Siddh ate with focused attention, consuming every morsel. Member of the Clean Banana Leaf Club, I noted. When he was done, he carefully placed his leaf on top of an overflowing compost bin and washed his hands. I ate slowly, taking my time. How could I expect him to remember me? I was different then, 5 years ago, newly engaged, happy, in a pink sateen ball gown, blonde tinted curls down my waist. I was considered a beauty. I wondered what he saw in this barely recognizable version of that other self. No longer beautiful, no longer flirtatious, no longer drunk. He had changed as well. From a grey Armani pinstripe to cotton pajamas and shirt, from a lively, humorous outlook to a gaunt, distracted indifference. I stood, washed my hands, and discarded my banana leaf. The boy brought us glasses of piping hot, milky coffee. We sat silently, waiting for the coffee to cool. When we're done, we can walk in the orchard nearby, he said. I have heard that banana leaves are regarded as the golden plate, which is in reference to silver plates, which are excellent for their antimicrobial properties. That is why we have so much silverware. The golden plate is said to be even more antimicrobial, but not actually made of gold, but made of banana leaf, as is still traditional in India. The orchard was a disorderly cluster of wizened fruit trees on rocky terrain. A dry wind rustled narrow silvery leaves that gave a little shade. A funeral procession advanced through the trees with the corpse wrapped in a sheet and quivering precariously on wooden planks carried by 4 men. Shrill chanting and the clanging of metal drums created a lively din. We made our way back to the hotel, not speaking, and soon its high walls topped with shards of colored glass came into view. A purring, air-conditioned bus that would take us to the temple was parked outside, and our guide, a nervous, wiry man in a khaki uniform, clipboard in hand, was ticking off names. Namaskaram, dear Ragnhildr. Siddh, what did death tell the boy? I asked as we stood in line, a little disconcerted by my own earnestness. Why won't you tell me? You can't know this, but since that New Year's Eve 5 years ago, I have been walking on the edge of a razor, checking my bleeding feet. This is in reference to the story of Nachiketa, the boy who asked death what is beyond the cycle of births and deaths. You are not qualified, he said without a trace of malice or mockery. I raised an eyebrow. And the little boy was qualified? Yes. The greatest temple in the universe, quote-unquote, was a gigantic, intricately carved stone edifice dating back to the 10th century that grandly presided over run-down, lesser structures that stretched in all directions. This site, we were informed by the guide, commemorated the end of the Great War of the ancient epic Ramayana, and marked the spot where God himself, the victor, did penance for atrocities he might have perpetrated. first time in history, God himself is saying sorry, the guide said apologetically. High time, someone yelled to hoots and jeers. We were all administrators from various NGOs, go-betweens, whose idealistic and naive notions had driven us to this point, who garnered little respect, whose daily grind was arduous and for the most part futile. We had been dispatched to this conference ostensibly to bow down to the promise of big data in doing away with world hunger, but our real and unstated objective was to woo corporate sponsors whose self-important executives would arrive in their limos that evening. Over cocktails and a fine dinner of many courses, the hard selling of one particular brand of suffering over another would commence. My competition was single-purpose suffering that was easily understood and costed. Cataract operations, medications for elephantiasis, etc. But I was not discouraged. My ace in the hole was that I was an American representing a Catholic NGO, a critical asset for American and European consortiums who were given the assurance that I, one of them, fully understood their insistence on accountability as being key in providing credible backup for their tax avoidance strategies. Thank you, Rhiannon. After footwear was removed and placed under seats, our self-conscious group made its way into a forecourt jammed with stalls offering the necessary accoutrements for various rituals. Fat garlands of roses entwined with gold thread, strings of marigolds, jasmine and hibiscus, and baskets of fruit, mounds of loose flowers, brass lamps, incense packs, camphor, colored powders, and seeds. Devotees rushed past us in the main hall, greedy to catch a glimpse of the deity dimly outlined within a deep recess. Carnival and desperation permeated the air. Thank you, Finding Bliss. You want promotion, job, money? You want son? I got priest for you, the guide offered, bracing himself as roving bands of priests descended on us and uttered curses when none of us would subscribe to their services. I might ask for a new job, I suggested to Sid. Maybe a new life. He took hold of my arm and drew me into a deserted corridor that encircled the main shrine. The stone floor was mysteriously layered with an inch of water. Sacred water, Sid averred, but I suspected a plumbing malfunction. I held my skirt up high and wondered what bacteria might be eating into my soles. Sid strolled along unconcerned, allowing the water to reach the edge of his pants. I shall wear the bottoms of my trousers rolled. I lobbed off a shot of J. Alfred Prufrock. Not sure how to pronounce his name. He was up to the task. Time present and time past are both present in time future, he quoted. T.S. Eliot began by insisting that his narrow Christian beliefs were all there was and ended up lifting truths from the Gita, which is of course a reference to the Bhagavad Gita. Ooh, you can see space behind it. As did Hegel, Schopenhauer, Kant, Husserl, Emerson, I threw in. I let go of my skirt and childishly splashed my feet in the water. So what are your so-called qualifications? I asked, a little sharply. You know, the ones I don't possess. The term he used was adhikaritva. He said he needed to say the word out loud and in that ancient language before he could fully explain it. To be fit for an undertaking, adhikaritva. To have the necessary qualifications for initiation into the secret of immortality and freedom from suffering. A tall order, I said. Rituals and incantations. These prerequisites are 4 in number, he said, ignoring my attempt at levity. Viveka, the ability to discriminate between the real and the unreal. Vairagya, dispassion. Sama, serenity with its 4 subsets. Dhamma, self-control. Uparati, withdrawal of the senses. Titiksha, forbearance. And Shraddha, faith in the teacher pending understanding. And finally, the 4th qualification, mumukshutva, an intense burning desire for liberation. Without these, there is no possibility for self-realization. I'm able to discriminate between the real and unreal, I said at once, then asked, taking up the 1st qualification, discernment between the real and unreal. How can anyone view the absurdity of this world as anything but unreal? I should know. The refugee camps where I've worked and still work, places of horror. I have witnessed great suffering, and I have suffered myself. In West Africa, I was stabbed, almost fatally. I've had severe cases of cholera and dengue, the after effects of which are still able to derail me. Pains and fevers plague me. He was impassive, unmoved. I know what you're getting at, I said, shifting the thrust of my argument. I am familiar with the Buddhist idea of nothingness, the Hindu notion about Maya, the illusory nature of the world. I minored in philosophy and He cut me off. These prerequisites are not like those meant for a college course, he interrupted, where objects are observed, tested, measured, studied. Here, the subject is you. Self-inquiry is the method for which solid preparation is mandatory. What do you mean by self-inquiry? I asked. Asking and answering the question, who am I? Surely I know who I am. Do you? He asked. I began to form a question, even an objection, but as we turned the corner, what appeared to be a stone sculpture of an elephant was in fact an enormous, hoary live elephant that filled a monumental doorway. Whoa, I shrieked. That's an elephant, a real elephant, right there, inside. Will it charge at us? No, he can't charge. Sid pointed to the thick chains girdling the creature's massive legs. The soles of his feet are rotting from standing for hours on this wet floor. He stands here because he is the living embodiment of the popular elephant god Ganesha, and a sight of him brings good luck. On festival days, he is laden with heavy honor and trotted out to take part in parades and fairs. He is dying. The elephant cast a bleary eye in my direction. I quickly looked away. I'm sorry, I muttered and hurried on. We continued our circumambulation. At one of the subsidiary shrines, we paused for a few minutes. I know full well who I am, I said, as well as who I am becoming. I am a good person, a thoughtful person, but I feel I am shutting down. The past 5 years of working to help settle refugees have made me hard and unfeeling, and sometimes I find myself blaming the victims. Those mothers who did not assert themselves, educate themselves, who will now wail over their dead sons. I find I am unable to sympathize. With a baby pierced by strands of barbed wire, a boy whose hands were blown off by an IED, the vacant stare of terror witnessed and perpetrated, the constant hope that help is near, an unwavering belief in miracles. Could my sense of apartness be your second prerequisite? Dispassion. Welcome, everyone. Dispassion, he said, has nothing to do with being aloof, insensitive, or uncaring. Dispassion comes about when you break free from the tyranny of likes and dislikes. We stepped out into the crowded and noisy temple courtyard and joined our companions. The greatest temple of the universe, quote-unquote, had been a disappointment, and the guide now importuned the group to allow him to take us to another, even more sacred spot with a, quote-unquote, 360 top-notch view. A price was fixed and the bus rumbled over a stony road until it came to a top at a modest hill with steps carved into one side. We scrambled up with difficulty, the steps being almost vertical and without handrails or even a twig to grab onto. At the summit was a neat, orderly shrine dedicated to that same guilt-ridden god. The object of worship was a pair of sandals carved in stone. And let's pause our reading of Moksha, liberation, there for now. Thank you for listening. So, to understand the secrets of immortality, there are 4 prerequisites: viveka, discrimination; vairagya, dispassion; sama, serenity of 4 kinds; dhamma, self-control; uparati, withdrawal of the senses; titiksha, forbearance; and shraddha, faith. And the final qualification is mumukshutva, an intense, burning desire for liberation. Our dear Sid has informed us of the nature of vairagya, dispassion, not from a sense of insensitivity or carelessness, but a kind of freedom from the tyranny of likes and dislikes. It's a beautiful way of putting it. Well, I look forward to continuing in the reading of this book with you next time.